it's been a little while, and last we were in Judges 11. I think we got through verse 11. So I wanted to kind of pick it up and continue. My wife's been really caught up with our newborn, so really haven't had the same time to make videos, and she's decided she wants to take a small break for the time being in making the video. So I'm going to continue with Judges on my own for right now until she's ready to come back, and then who knows where we'll pick it up at. But last we came, Jephthah was made commander over the elders of Gilead. So as he's a new commander, the Ammonites are coming up against Gilead. They needed a strong leader. They chose Jephthah after treating them like dirt. He made a deal with them and decided to take over. So here's how he deals with the king of the Ammonites. So Jephthah sent messengers to the Ammonite king with the question, "What do you have against me that you have attacked my country?" So he's asking, why are you even attacking us? What's going on here? And the king of the Ammonites answered Jephthah's messengers, "When Israel came out of Egypt, they took away my land from the Arnon to the Jabbok, all the way to the Jordan. Now give it back peaceably." So he's basically saying, you have something that belongs to us, we want it. Israel had this land, I think, for somewhere around like 300 years at this point in time. So all of a sudden, this king comes up, decides, hey, we're taking this land back. But Jephthah says something to him and says, this is what Jephthah says. Israel did not take the land of Moab or the land of the Ammonites. So this is the Ammonite king, and he's saying they did not take the land of the Ammonites. But when they came out of Egypt, Israel went through the wilderness to the Red Sea and on to Kadesh. Then Israel sent messengers to the king of Edom, saying, "Give us permission to go through your country." But the king of Edom would not listen. They sent also to the king of Moab, and he refused. So Israel stayed at Kadesh. So he's basically saying, like, here's what happened on our side. Next they traveled through the wilderness, skirted the lands of Edom and Moab, passed along the eastern side of the country of Moab, and camped on the other side of the Arnon. They did not enter the territory of Moab, for the Arnon was its border. Then Israel sent messengers to Sihon, king of the Amorites, which they're different than the Ammonites. The Amorites are completely different, who ruled in Heshbon, and said to him, "Let us pass through the country to our own place." Sihon, however, did not trust Israel to pass through his territory. He mustered all his troops and encamped at Jahaz and fought with Israel. So they said, hey, can we pass through? The king's like, nope, I don't think so. And in fact, he was probably looking at them like, well, they got a decent sized force. Who knows, they might try to take us by force. So we're going to catch them up and deal with it ourselves. So he ends up fighting Israel. So then the Lord, the God of Israel, gave Sihon, I think I'm saying his name wrong, and his whole army into Israel's hands, and they defeated them. Israel took over the land of the Amorites who lived in that country, capturing all of it from the Arnon to the Jabbok and from the desert to the Jordan. So these are the same territories that the Ammonite king is requesting. And he's basically saying, hey, look, man, we took these from the Amorites, and that was after they attacked us for no reason, and the Lord gave that victory into our hands. Now, since the Lord, the God of Israel, has driven the Amorites out before his people Israel, what right have you to take it over? Will you not take what your God Chemosh gives you? Likewise, whatever the Lord our God has given us, we will possess. Are you any better than Balak, son of Zippor, king of Moab? Did he ever quarrel with Israel or fight with them? For 300 years Israel occupied Heshbon, Eror, the surrounding settlements, and all the towns along the Arnon. Why didn't you take them during that time? I have not wronged you, but you are doing me wrong by waging war against me. Let the Lord, the judge, decide the dispute this day between the Israelites and the Ammonites. So it's like, look, you guys were around then, so was Moab. Moab's never came at us sideways or tried to take the territory back. And also, you know, it's been going on for 300 years. Why didn't you try before this? What is this all of a sudden thing? And this is territory that we got in victory from our Lord Yahweh. And he's like, you know, you guys have your God Chemosh, but not when you guys go out and you win victories, you take your plunder, and that's what Chemosh gives into your hands. Are we trying to take what you guys have rightfully given to you by your gods? You know, this is something that a war that was given on to us 300 years ago that we won, and that our God gave these lands into our hands. So what I like about this approach, what he's trying to do is Jephthah isn't just going guns a hole. Someone's attacking us, and we're gonna go ahead and just smack them back and deal with them in that way. Instead, he's trying kind of a diplomatic approach, like, hey man, before you unleash all this and we lose lives on either side, let's try to get to the root cause of this. And the king of Ammon, however, paid no attention to the message Jephthah sent him. Then the Spirit of the Lord came on Jephthah. He crossed Gilead and Manasseh, passed through Mizpah of Gilead, and from there he advanced against the Ammonites. And Jephthah made a vow to the Lord, if you give the Ammonites into my hands, whatever comes out of the door of my house to meet me when I return in triumph from the Ammonites will be the Lord's. I will sacrifice it as a burnt offering. This is dumb because, you know, Jephthah, the Spirit of the Lord came on him, so he already had this empowerment to win this battle. This Spirit of the Lord coming on him didn't come after he made this promise. I think that's where we got to be careful when we start trying to make deals with God. Like, well, if you do this, we'll do this, and if you do this, we'll do this. You know, God didn't request anything special. Like when it came to, I need this out of your house, that out of your house. What he wanted was obedience, and he wanted the heart of the people. So Jephthah kind of makes a weird thing here, but it's also the world that's in him, because when you think about it, you know, the only reason he's the leader and commander over at the elders of Gilead is because they made this deal with him. And he's been raised in a way, if you watch the last video, where he was mistreated, and the only time he's requested to do something and they need his help, they have to offer him something to give that. So he kind of has this worldly mindset, and he's repeating the actions of what just happened with him and the elders to God, and that's something we should never do, is treat God like that ever in a million years. I mean, that's just, I don't make deals like that, because there's nothing I can offer God that he needs from me. Therefore, I feel silly even offering it. The only reason I think I'm given anything in any way is mercy and grace. And so that's kind of a bad mood, and it's kind of showing that Jephthah was also, as much as he was the chosen judge for this time, that he also had this corruption and mindset of the world, and didn't kind of know some of his scriptures. You know, they had the oral history passed down, and they knew of God, and obviously he's praying to God, so he knows of God, but he missed a bigger point. So, my son's starting to wake up, so I might have to go feed him. Anyway, then Jephthah went over to fight the Ammonites, and the Lord gave them into his hands. He devastated 20 towns from Aroer to the vicinity of Minnith, as far as Abel Keramim. Thus Israel subdued Ammon. When Jephthah returned to his home in Mizpah, who should come out to meet him but his daughter, dancing to the sound of timbrels? She was an only child. Except for her, he had neither son nor daughter. When he saw her, he tore his clothes and cried, "Oh no, my daughter, you have brought me down, and I am devastated. I have made a vow to the Lord that I cannot break." "My father," she replied, "you have given your word to the Lord. Do to me just as you promised, now that the Lord has avenged you of your enemies, the Ammonites. But grant me this one request," she said. "Give me 2 months to roam the hills and weep for my friends, because I will never marry." "You may go," he said, and he let her go for 2 months. She and her friends went to the hills and wept because she would never marry. After the 2 months she returned to her father, and he did to her as he had vowed. She was a virgin. From this comes the Israelite tradition that each year the young women of Israel go out for 4 days to commemorate the daughter of Jephthah the Gileadite. So it sucks reading that, and it's kind of like, whoa. I think without context, when you read the Bible, you might be trying to think this is a good thing, or the Bible saying this is a good thing that Jephthah did, but it was silly, and proving that he didn't know his scriptures. If you go back, and I'd have to look it up because maybe I don't know my scriptures as well as I should. There was a certain ritual they had where they could get out of fulfilling certain promises they made onto the Lord, like that. I think it was some type of sacrifice. I can try to Google it real quick because I have my laptop right in front of me. But if he would have can't do more than 2 things at the same time sometimes. So I'm not gonna be able to find it, so I maybe have to put it in the comments if I find it before I post this video. But basically, I believe there was some type of sacrifice you could make in order to get out of those type of things, and it would have been acceptable. So either way, there's a few things there. Is one, read your scriptures. Understand that God operates different than the world. We tend to see things with a man's mind because we're men, and we're corrupted, and we can taint our thoughts sometimes. There's usually some kind of selfish something in our thoughts, just like with Jephthah. He wasn't going out there as some patriotic duty to save his people. He was there because he was now going to become the leader and basically have this life that was stolen from him. He was the biggest, strongest, most athletic of the boys, but because he was born as this prostitute, they cast him away, and they didn't want nothing to do with him, and he was treated bad, and they, didn't want nothing to do with him. So he gets this thing like, well, I'm getting it. Well, this is what you're going to give me if I help you. So there's an exchange there, and that's one mistake you make, is like, don't think you can make that kind of exchange with God. Even when Moses was going to make a covenant, not Moses, Abraham was going to make a covenant with God, he fell into a deep sleep, and they cut the animals in half, because in that time, people would walk through both halves of the carcasses and basically swear a vow that, hey, if we break this vow, let this happen to us. That was the thoughts behind it, even though it seems weird to us nowadays. That's how they did it back then. So when Abraham was put into a deep sleep, you had a flame and then a smoking, smoldering, pot or torch go through either side, which are both representations of God. So God showed up as a pillar of cloud and a pillar of fire when he led the Israelites out of Egypt with Moses, and that's kind of symbolic of how he revealed himself, or like showed himself at certain times. So in this picture, both of them are going through there. So basically, he's saying, the burden is off of you and onto me, but I still want to make this covenant because I love you, Abraham, and I want to bring this promise through your line, and that shows in Jesus Christ, as the punishment was on God. He had to give his only son to pay for the sin, and that was the original deal all the way back when they cut those animals and Abraham fell in the deep sleep. So anyway, my whole point, and that's kind of a roundabout way to go about it, is making deals with God like that is silly. Like, what, God, if you give me this big house, I'll stop drinking. What you're going to find if you just stop drinking anyway is you're going to find that you're going to have more money, and you're going to have a better attitude, and you're going to get over certain hardships you're dealing with, and a vice that you're running to, and you might even be able to afford a house at that point. It's not because you made that deal with God, it's because you decided to clean that part of your life up. And when I do things to God, for God, it's not that I'm doing it for him so he can have some type of benefit. God can't benefit off of me. He doesn't need me to benefit. I want to get my life in line for what God has in store for me, or what God wants from me, like expects of me, behavior-wise. I believe I have a purpose, and I believe that in order to walk in that purpose, I have to change certain aspects of my life, whether it's drinking energy drinks, whether it's playing video games. It could be controlling your temper, being a better parent, being a better husband, being a better coworker, watching the jokes you say. There's so many things that can go with that. And as you try to get your life in order, you start to find that these things start falling in place. They're not falling in place because you've given this up and God owes you something. They're falling in place because you're actually walking in that purpose that God had for you. And that's a blessing in its own. Next thing is be careful what you say too. This is a story, and I don't know if it relates, but it's something that sticks with me, unfortunately. Is when my grandma was dying of cancer, she was in basically a hospice bed in my old bedroom that I grew up in, and I was there Mondays through Fridays all day. My grandpa was there nights when he got off of work. I worked at the weekends, so we alternated taking care of my grandmother. I worked nights and weekends, he worked during the days, so I'd be there all day. I'd go to work for a few hours, and I'd come home and do it again the next day. Then the weekends I worked really long shifts, so we had this thing, and like it was weird being there because it was just me, my aunt, which is my grandmother's sister, and her. And I didn't know what to do. I was kind of lost, and I'd never experienced dealing with death or someone dying in that way. And I never even honestly thought I'd have to process something like that. It never crossed my mind. But my buddy Tim came over, and I was looking at this muddy path. My grandma had these bricks sitting in front of our playroom window for years, saying, "I'm going to build a path one day." And she had dug out the old path that was there, and all there was a bunch of mud. And it wasn't really raining, but it wasn't really sunny that season. It was kind of like a springish season, and you get a little bit of everything, so it wasn't like it was dreary outside, but still there was mud. And I remember like, while I'm here, I'm gonna build this path, and the way that I imagined she wanted it. And so my buddy Tim came over. We thought about it, started working on this path, and we were almost done. Like, we were ready to start laying bricks. We'd finally got the mud so even. We got the lines up. We had the string pulled across. We had all the equipment. We had all the bricks lined up, ready to go. We had this pattern in our mind we're gonna do, and that was all the hard stuff was done. I was just putting the bricks down and getting it there, and I figured we could do that in a couple hours. And I remember looking at my buddy Tim, kind of like just happy, like, you know what? I'm so glad they're not gonna have to drag my grandmother through the mud when she dies. And I went inside and she died. I'm only laughing not because I think it's funny, just because it's just I think about that so much sometimes. And it's not like I was punished for saying that, but what I'm saying is you never know what's gonna happen. So sometimes guarding your voice, your words is good. And Jephthah did not guard it, and he made a stupid decision, said a stupid thing, and ended up committing this act on his daughter. There's some people who believe that he didn't. She just remained a virgin and lived in the home. But I mean, I read it that he did to her as he had vowed, and that what he vowed to her, the Lord, he's going to sacrifice her as a burnt offering. Very weird. God never requested a child sacrifice, burning people alive. That wasn't one of his commandments there, and it's something that's not practiced. It's actually like an atrocious thing done in Israel. Like, even burning human bones on the altar defiled the altar, and you can never use it again, basically. So this is a horrible act committed with a promise to God, and Jephthah, rewind back to his mindset. He's treating God like a human man, like he can be bargained with. And then he's making promises, bold statements that he doesn't know what's going to walk out of his house. He has no idea what's going to walk out of his house. Like, what was your thought process? Was there going to be a goat that came through the front door before your daughter? Like, what did you think was going to come out of the house? A servant? Were you going to sacrifice your servant? What was your thought process behind saying that? And then in the end, wasn't in his scriptures enough to really understand that there was a way out of it. That there was a way for him to go around this promise that he made, especially with how atrocious it was. And this, I would assume that this didn't help the prosperity of Israel. I mean, seeing this from now their new leader sacrificing his own daughter, like, what's different than a god like Kamash, where they were sacrificing their kids for rainwater and good crops and fertility and whatnot. So that's basically all I had for this chapter. I wanted to do this one and get it going again, get the ball rolling. It's kind of late. It's like 1:30 in the morning, and my boy is waking up, so I'm going to go feed him. So I hope everyone got something out of that. Just kind of going through the history of Judges, and we'll pick it up again in Judges 12 next time. Thank you so much. God bless. Alright, I'm adding a quick follow-up to this Judges 11 video about, I made a statement that there was a way for Jephthah to get out of his vow. Looking through Numbers and the Mosaic Law, just kind of doing some research and reading the Bible and reading some other sources. I did find that there is a way in the Jewish tradition to get out of obligations. I did want to put the conundrum up for it. There was ways for a daughter to be out of her vow. A father could null and void her vow if he didn't agree with it, and she wouldn't be held to it no matter what. There was ways for wives, and it's kind of a safe haven, but still adult men had to pull through with their vows. That being said, there's two things happening here, which would be breaking a vow to the Lord, which God was not cool with, but also child sacrifice, which God is not cool with. You're kind of in this moral conundrum. So also, if you think about when we went to Jericho and were hidden by the prostitute, and the guards knocked on the door, boom, 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 are these men with you? And she was like, no, they actually escaped earlier and you missed them by like 10 minutes, kind of thing. There's two things that are happening there. Is she's lying, which isn't okay, but she's also protecting Israel. So there's certain things where laws are looked at a little differently, much like when David ran away from Saul and ate bread he wasn't supposed to eat. So there's certain things you have to think of. The whole intention of the Mosaic Law when it came to like obligations and debts was to prevent people from making too rash of vows to God, and for ways to kind of rectify that. Also, you have guilt offerings that you could have given up to take your place in the sin. Eventually, when Jesus comes, the vows are forgiven when you break them, because it is sin when you break them. So I just kind of wanted to put that food for thought out there, because I know earlier in the video I said some things. Some people might be like, dude, you're wrong, which admittedly so, I would say I was 50% wrong, and maybe I need to learn my scriptures a little more. I had this thought rolling in my head of something that I had read previously, and that was when I was very first going to do that study. And the end point of that thought was still in my head, but the actual material wasn't in front of me, or still like memorized details. So I wanted to just kind of do this follow up and add that to this video at the end. So again, hope everything worked out, and God bless.